your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us. The Lethbridge Fire and EMS Department say they're frustrated with the EMS dispatch system. Over the week, the department took to Twitter to express some of that frustration, saying the model is broken and there were situations where no physical ambulance was able to respond. Lethbridge Fire Chief Greg Adair says AHS released a new program last year, which will hopefully take the pressure off emergency services.
Non-ambulance transfer program. It's the NAT program. And what that will do is that will free up some of the ambulance and paramedics and those resources so they don't have to do return transfers of patients who do not require medical assistance. All they require is an actual resource to drive them from either the hospital back to their healthcare facility, hospital to appointment. So this is a really good initiative because that will help take that pressure off the EMS or help relieve that pressure within the EMS system so that more ambulances are available.
The province says EMS dispatch was centralized to save taxpayers around $6 million annually. Meanwhile, Alberta's opposition NDP agrees that the system is broken and made an urgent call to the UCP government earlier this week.
There is a serious crisis in our ambulance system, leading to burned-out paramedics, chaos in our hospitals, and worst of all, delays in reaching Albertans who call 911 in an emergency. Now, Danielle Smith and her administrator, John Cowell, think they can address this by just nibbling around the edges of interfacility and non-urgent transfers. But the bottom line is we just don't have enough paramedics. I strongly urge the UCP to finally listen to paramedics and start taking real action. What's more, I call on Jason Copping and John Cowell to release the full data set for the rest of the province so we can see what the number of unfilled shifts is province-wide, right up to the end of December.
A new monitoring system is now being used among the Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services crews to help them solve some of the challenges involving cardiac arrest cases. The system is called Case Review, and it was purchased back in 2020. It has increased the number of patients who have been resuscitated.
One of the trends we saw using this technology is that when we successfully resuscitate somebody from cardiac arrest, about 50% of the time that patient will have a low blood pressure. And if they have a low blood pressure, they're at a high risk for having another cardiac arrest. So what we were able to do working with Alberta Health Services and our medical director is we were able to take a treatment that's typically reserved for the ICU and the ER and bring it right to first responders, and we're able to deliver that to the patient in their where we find the patient and stabilize their blood pressure, avoiding that second cardiac arrest.
The warming center at Streets Alive has been suspended. Both Streets Alive and the City of Lethbridge said it had a lot to do with loitering and our warmer Chinook temperatures. Officials say a new location is being sought for when the mercury plummets once again.
The need is definitely there for a warming center. We saw that in December when our wind chill, hit like minus 47, and it was really, really cold. It was a definite need. What we saw during the last couple of weeks when the temperature has been much more mild is that we had more of a situation on the outside of the building than utilizing the inside of the building effectively.
Jennifer Lepko says Streets Alive is working with the city to have a new warming center location in place within the next couple of weeks. And ending on a good note here, a Team Canada assistant coach has returned to Lethbridge after winning gold at the World Junior Hockey Championship. Brett Kissio, who is also the head coach for the Lethbridge Hurricanes, says it feels great to have brought back some hardware. He says it was a real honor to have been a part of the winning team.
It's just an honor. It's an honor to coach for your country, and there's a lot of weight there to make sure you do things right and you're prepared and have the players in the right spots and ready to go. But it's an absolute honor and a privilege to coach for Canada, and to win gold and bring it home for your country is always special. Our players were exceptional players, and we had some talent up there up front, obviously, and I thought our goaltender did a great job. Milich playing net. and all through the lineup, just a lot of team buy-in and a lot of great players doing some special things.
Canada beat Czechia 3-2 in overtime to claim that title. Canada has now won 20 gold medals at the World Junior Hockey Championships since 1977. We need to take a quick break. Later in the show, we find out why the Alberta government payouts are not going to cause greater inflation. Keep it right here. Premier Danielle Smith says she's no longer going to be seeking pardons for COVID-19 health violators, despite promises 3 months ago to do just that. Smith says she's regularly contacting Crown prosecutors about these cases, but the Justice Department later issued a statement that appeared to contradict Smith, saying the Premier had discussions about such cases with the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General, but has never spoken directly with Crown prosecutors. Opposition NDP Justice critic Irfan Sabir says Smith's comments are a clear case of judicial interference and called for an independent investigation. An Alberta man was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 13 years in the killing of 2 Métis hunters in 2020. A family spokesperson chatted with the media following the sentencing.
All the days since that day have been really tough for this family and for the community, and no amount of justice will ever ease their pain or bring the boys back. We just want to say thank you to all the supporters that have been out there, that have been praying, that have been sending messages, that have come to court on this really cold day and been outside waiting, to the media who have followed this trial and who've reached out and also supported this, to the Crown as well. They just want to, on behalf of the families, I just want to say thank you.
Toronto Sun columnist and political reporter Brian Lilly says Albertans appear to have a serious issue with the Trudeau government right now. It has a lot to do with the Liberals wanting Alberta to transition away from the oil and gas sector. In an interview with Hal Roberts, Lilly says Trudeau will be discussing a number of issues with his federal counterparts, including carbon capture, electric vehicles, and the energy sector. Take a look.
Now, Brian, it appears as though the PM has been taking a few shots at Alberta, which has not been sitting well with Premier Danielle Smith in the UCP caucus.
Yeah, he was giving an interview to Reuters at the start of the year, and he went off on Alberta in a very strange way, because it's not the way he would talk about any other province. So I understand why Albertans are so frustrated. Look, he's talking about how the political class in Alberta doesn't care about the environment, doesn't want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You talk to the energy sector, I've been doing it for a decade. You've been doing it a long time. You talk to politicians, you listen to Premier Danielle Smith, and I saw her on TV just the other day talking about how she wants Alberta to have the greenest barrels. That was the term she used. We want to have the greenest barrels in the world. And that was before Trudeau had made his comments, or at least before they were public, I believe. And she's talking in this way. And Trudeau is just dismissive because it's someone who is on another side politically from him, who he doesn't have a good relationship with, and decides that he's got to go all in on attack on them. It's not leadership. It's not the way it should happen. Most Canadians would actually like to see our political leaders work together for the most part. Now, look, both in Alberta and in Quebec, taking a shot at Ottawa is a surefire way for a provincial politician to boost themselves. But when it comes down to getting things done, people still want both levels of government to work together, not fight, not get in the way of each other. And that appears to be what Trudeau's doing now. And you talk about this green transition. Well, there's the Canadian Green Growth Fund, and Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland was being grilled over that the other day at a Senate committee over the fact that there's $2 billion in the fall economic statement for this, and it's to buy shares in a corporation that doesn't exist to try and attract private money to pay for this green transition, and it's not even set up. They're putting money into getting Alberta off of oil and gas before they even know what they're doing. it's quite frustrating on all sides.
Now, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says she may in fact go ahead with her own healthcare reforms. What would they potentially look like, Brian?
If you can't measure, you can't plan. And a lot of things we just don't know in our healthcare system. What is a procedure actually costing us? How long is the actual wait time? We have vague notions of this, but the actual data on healthcare, Alberta is actually better than other provinces from my experience, but it's still not where it should be considering the amount of money that goes into it. So she's looking at a bunch of reforms that will change the way that it works. As far as I can tell, she is not talking about going to away from the single payer system.
Up next, we answer the questions some are having about the UCP government's financial assistance for Alberta families. That's next. Keep it right here. The Alberta government announced more financial help for families, seniors, and disabled Albertans. The province says $100 affordability payments will be starting in January. Officials expect the money will provide relief to offset inflation pressure. Beginning January 18th, seniors 65 and older who are not receiving the Alberta Seniors Benefit and eligible parents with kids under 18 can apply for a total of $600 in monthly payments. Officials say the funding will offer help to those most vulnerable.
That means if you receive AISH, PDD services, the Alberta Seniors Benefit or income support, you don't need to sign up or fill out any extra paperwork. You should receive your first payment later this month. And don't worry, these targeted affordability payments will be considered exempt income, meaning they won't affect any other benefit you are already receiving. We know that seniors and Albertans living with disabilities need help, and we are proud to provide support that is timely and accessible.
But will there be more help for Albertans? In February, we'll see a release of the provincial budget and then an election just a few months later in May. Does this mean the financial help will keep on coming as Albertans decide who to vote for? Earlier this week, I chatted with Chris Sims of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation about all these government payouts. Have a look. For the rest of the people, and I think there's at least 2 million who don't get to take part in this benefit, what does it mean for everybody else? And I mean, are you hearing, are people upset about this, that it should, if it's specifically for inflation, that it should maybe reach more people?
We are hearing mostly good news from people, and that's a nice change, especially the past 2 years. The calls for help from working people who say they can't make ends meet have been intensifying. We'd get typically an email a week or a phone call every few days. That tone has changed.
Do you think that that the government will provide more benefits come down the road a little bit, so that more the working class that don't have the kids, maybe their kids are already, maybe they're the empty nesters that are still working, but they're still under that threshold of $180K per household. Do you think that there will be more I guess more benefits coming towards those folks?
Yes, and we're in a really good place right now because there's a surplus, right? And so we have to be cautious in the sense that we can't spend all of it at once on, goodies being handed out to folks, as much as I would like to see that happen. They have to be careful with their surplus, and we have to do that for a few reasons. One, we're still in debt. We're still in mega debt, and our interest rates are going up. Governments are not immune from that. So our interest payments on the debt are still in the, several $1 million. So they have to be prudent and make sure they keep using some of that surplus to pay down the debt, which they have done. So good for them. We have to praise them when they do the right thing. But the budget is coming up. So the provincial budget is due to be released at the end of next month, the end of February. I would hazard to guess that there's going to be some form of more relief, especially during these times of inflation and super high carbon taxes being imposed on us by the federal government. I think you will see more relief coming in some form.
In terms of the affordability plan payments, how it's coming out $100 a month, is there any reason why the government chose to do that instead of just one lump payment of $600 provided to these families?
It could just be the that it's easier to, hand it out in a couple of different portion payments, and that it's more likely that it could help instead of it being one lump sum. It's really important that they do provide this relief. And I wanted to stress that some folks are raising the issue of inflation when it comes to these checks being sent out. It's different from federal inflation, and I'll explain why. So you do need to be careful with the sending out of money. That's fair. But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his Bank of Canada friends are printing money out of thin air. Poof. Just like a stamp, right? They're making monopoly money. That is what is helping to really increase inflation. This money, right? This money is based on the wealth from the resources. So it is representative of wealth. So it is a different form of payment being given back to taxpayers. And so that is where I would draw that distinction.
We need to take a quick break. When we come back, we speak with a controversial pastor running for office. Keep it right here. Well, you might remember the name Arthur Pawlowski, the controversial Calgary street preacher who was jailed for breaking COVID restrictions. He's still on house arrest, but the pastor has turned to politics to fight a system he says has failed so many Albertans. Pawlowski became the leader of the Independence Party in September of last year, and you'll see his Independence Party on the ballot this May. I had a chance to chat with Pawlowski, and he's adamant that he's not a separatist, but a fighter for freedom. I think that you would have to admit that as a fledgling political party, you might be unlikely to see any candidates elected this May, but are you doing this simply to draw attention to the issues at hand, or do you see yourself growing the party and eventually winning some seats down the road?
Oh, my friend, you have not been paying attention. In the past few months, we have thousands of new members. People are getting excited about the idea of someone that have been proving over and over again that I mean what I say. When Arthur Pawlowski says something, that means I'm going to do it, even if it means me ending up in prison. I was pressured by the Crown prosecutors to say, I'm sorry for being part of the truck convoy. And I said that thousands of times, and I'm going to say it again. Being part of the truck convoy was one of the best things I've ever done on this soil. It was amazing. It was beautiful. I'm not sorry. The only regret I have is that I did not spend more time with our amazing Canadians, not less. So what I saw was amazing patriotism, love that I have not seen on this side of the border. I've seen people coming together from every walk of life, every creed, young and old, children bringing their pets, their dogs, their horses. I mean, feeding each other, praying with each other, singing with each other, hugging each other. It was absolutely amazing. I do not regret that. You see, I am not your typical politician. I am a pastor. I will never apologize for being a Christian. I will not apologize that I'm a pastor. And if you want a pastor that actually says what he means, well, I am your man. And I think it resonates with people. People are signing to the Independence Party left and right. Wherever we show up right now, it's hundreds of people that come. And people are excited. I thought that me being a pastor is going to be a hindrance. Actually, it's opposite. We had William Aberhart, a pastor, politician, Premier of Alberta. 350,000 people were listening to him every week as he preached from the pulpit on Sunday. Then Manning came. 600,000 people were listening to his sermons. He was the longest serving politician in the Commonwealth during that time. Well, we had two pastors premiers. Well, it's time for a third one.
Okay, now Art, maybe tell our viewers, what's the difference between your party as compared to other separatist parties in Alberta?
Well, we're not separatists. We want independence. No, put it this way. you are married to a very abusive husband. He is raping you, he's beating you up, and he's stealing money. And then the next day you come to him and say, hey, honey, I married you, but I don't have even enough to feed our children. And boom, you get another beating. And this is going on for over 100 years. Even before Alberta joined the Confederation, the East has been raping us, stealing from us, and destroying us. We want independence. You see, people are scared. The enemy is using the fear tactics. Says, hey, if you separate, then you're going to be wiped out. You don't stand a chance. Well, listen to me. We want what Quebec has. Quebec has independence. They have their own pension. They have their own police. They are free, truly. They have a free province. We want what they have, a little bit more as well. If they could do it, why can't we? Are they smarter than Albertans? Are they more, capable than Albertans? I don't think so. I think they were brave enough to say, hey, we want our freedom. That's what I want for Albertans. I want Albertans to dig into the resources. I mean, we are sleeping on oil. We can become truly Saudi Arabia of North America. I want to give incentives to the people for their own oil. Why everything is stolen from us? Why we pay taxes that are killing us and destroying the future of our children? Let's revive our economy. Let's dig what's rightfully ours. God has given it to us, and we are not able to do this because the federal government is destroying us, is wiping us out. And independence is not a separatist movement. Independence is a message.
If you'd like to see my entire interview with Art Pulowski, it's available on the Bridge City News YouTube channel. Time for another break, but when we return, we hear about a Made in Alberta movie, and an acclaimed Alberta musician reminisces about his friendship with Canadian music legend, the late Ian Tyson. Stay with us. Welcome back. The music and entertainment industries are a dream for many to participate in. Here in Southern Alberta, we have our share of entertainers who still remember and appreciate their roots. I recently chatted with Juno Award-winning country artist Corb Lund, who has added acting to his list of accolades. We talked about a movie he recently starred in, plus his performance on the Grand Ole Opry stage and the impact made on his life and career by his legendary friend, the late Ian Tyson. So, Corb, I want to start off by talking about a dear friend of yours who was also a Canadian legend, so Ian Tyson, who just passed away. And I'm so sorry for your loss, Corb. I know that he meant a lot to you.
Yeah, he was a good friend. It's a big loss for everybody. We knew it was coming. He was getting toward the end of his trail, and he went peacefully, so that's good, but big loss for sure.
Yeah, so maybe tell me about him, and how far did you two go back?
I think I met him about 20 years ago. I was doing maybe more. I was doing a tribute show called The Gift, where me and a bunch of people were doing covers, like doing Ian Tyson songs in a touring theater show. And he came out to the Calgary show, and I met him there. And since then, we've recorded a bunch of stuff together and toured a bunch together and played lots of shows and tried to write some tunes together. And yeah, spent a lot of time with him.
Okay, so was Ian an inspiration to you musically in some ways?
Yeah, he was kind of a role model in terms of writing songs with Canadian references. It's hard to do that because if you write American stuff, if you're from America and you put Chicago or LA or Dallas into a song, it has built-in resonance already and people kind of know what you're talking about. But for an international audience, it's much harder to put Calgary in a song or High River or something. And Ian figured out a way to do it, to make it work. Like he did it in Four Strong Winds. That's probably the most famous reference to Alberta in a popular international song. But yeah, he kind of approached it through a geography cowboy kind of way, which kind of made sense. And I've sort of learned to do that too.
What kind of an impact on Canadian music and Canadian culture did he have?
Pretty big one. I mean, we kind of consider him our guy, but he was internationally huge too. But yeah, I think 5 or 6 years ago, they had a contest or a poll on CBC about the greatest Canadian song ever, and it was Four Strong Winds. So that tells you something. That was a user poll, like a listener poll. And I think I don't know. That song's almost like a second Canadian national anthem, I think. And then he's written a ton of songs. He's had different phases to his career, and he was huge in the folk scene in the 60s, and then sort of did some country rock stuff with Great Speckled Bird, and then some Nashville records, and then in the early 80s he was the sort of the one of the leaders of a big renaissance in traditional cowboy music, and he's been doing that ever since. So he's had many phases, and he's really good at all of them.
That's amazing. What an inspiration. You two did, you performed together, you did some shows together. So what was it like to be up on stage with him?
That was fun, mostly. Like after a while, I just sort of forgot about his professional track record, and he just became a buddy, kind of. It never felt like I was hanging out with somebody that was 30 years older. He always felt like any of my musician buddies. So mostly it was just fun.
Okay, so switching gears here, this past year was a huge year for you, Corb. So you starred in a movie, you got to perform live on the Grand Ole Opry stage in Nashville. So what was it like for you being up on that stage?
It was kind of nerve-wracking. Yeah, it's been a busy year. That's been so long ago. That was in April, I guess. But yeah, it was moving for sure. They have a chunk of the old stage from the Ryman Auditorium, a circle, maybe 6 or 8 foot diameter, and it's from the old stage, and it's all warped and worn out. And they have that center stage. So that's where you stand and you sing. So everybody stood there, Hank and Willie and Waylon and everybody. So yeah, it was good. My storytelling songs work well in that format. I think they like me.
Corb, let's talk about your new movie. It's called Guitar Lessons. So what's the movie about, and how did this all come about?
I'm buddies with the guy who wrote it and directed it. His name's Aaron James, and I've done little bit parts in some of his older movies, and yeah, he just came down to my house and leaned on me to do it. I didn't really want to do a lead role because I've never done anything that challenging as an actor. I've just done little bit parts. But he convinced me to do it. And I mostly did it because I liked the script a lot. It was a really cool story about a northern Alberta community. It's a very Alberta story, very Canadian. Apparently, it was the most successful, like the most well-attended Canadian movie in Canadian theaters this year.
We'll be right back. When we return, we discuss financial literacy and the federal Liberals. Is there a path to financial stewardship for our federal government? That's next.